All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Mindgasms podcast. I'm going to talk to Chris James today from Mixed Mental Arts, which is where most of my guests come from. And we're going to talk about Jonathan Haidt, who I talk about all the time, and everything that he talks and writes about in his books and in his speeches and on podcasts and whatnot. So basically, psychology, religion, politics, morality, and culture. And yeah, those are all very interesting topics. So to start off, do you want to just introduce yourself to those people who don't know you, Chris?
Sure. My name's Chris. I've been a longtime mixed metal arts fan. Actually, going back to when it was originally the Brian Callen show.
Oh, me
and then it,
too.
and then it switched to mixed metal arts, and now it sounds
Yeah.
like we're switching back again. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, I've done a few of their chats, and I forget it's 270. I'm on mixed metal arts episode 8, which
Still there? Uh-oh. Oh, there you are. Did you,
hey,
did you get kicked out?
yeah, something happened there. Sorry, man.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you got kicked out just when you were saying you're on one of the Mixed Mental Arts episodes.
Oh yeah, I'm on 237, I think I am. Anyway, it was the one where Hunter went to Detroit,
Oh
and
yeah, I heard that one.
yeah, Drew Samples on there too, and yeah, there was a bunch of us. So, but yeah, I've been a fan of mixed metal arts for a while. Big fan of books too. That's what kind of attracted me to the podcast originally, and obviously, I love Haidt. I've read all of his books. It's been a while since I read Happiness Hypothesis. The newest one I read was Calling of the American Mind.
Yeah, you were on the Mixed Mental Arts chat with me and Dusty, right?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, it's been a fan of books, fan of podcasts, and that's about it for me.
Yeah, me too.
Cool.
So what do you want to talk about first in terms of Jonathan Haidt? I mean, I know he obviously talks about a lot of different topics. He talks about, I guess, more particularly religion and happiness or hypothesis rather, and I guess kind of religion and politics in the righteous mind, and then obviously sort of politics and kind of culture and childhood psychological development and stuff like that too. Those are all really interesting. I think my favorite one is I guess my favorite one is probably The Righteous Mind. Which one's your favorite?
Yeah, I'd say Righteous Mind too. That one for me was the one because I grew up a lot like you, I think, from a very religious background. My whole family is Irish Catholic. All my aunts and uncles, very Catholic. I was baptized. I went to go meet the Pope when I was like 18. I went to a Catholic school.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Which
the whole
pope was it? Which pope was it that you met?
it was the one after I want to say the one after John Paul II, or maybe it was John Paul II. I can't remember. I was like 18 at the time, and I'm gonna be 40 soon, so it was almost 20 years ago. But
Oh,
it was
okay.
at they used to have this thing called World Youth Day where they would have they still have it actually, where the Pope comes and visits a certain country, and then all the youth from that country or from surrounding countries goes and does the talk. So ours was in France, but
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, so I went to France. Actually, yeah, it was kind of cool. It was my first time in Europe, and yeah, it was fun. But for me, yeah, Righteous Mind for sure, because when you switch over from a religious family upbringing, and then I kind of did the whole secular thing for a while. I did the Sam Harris, and I did the atheist, route for a bit, and then now I'm kind of a mix of both. But when you go, through all these changes in your life, yeah, obviously a lot of questions, right? So, and I think for me, the Righteous Mind, it not answered a lot of those questions, but it helped me put into perspective how people and fundamentalist mindsets kind of think. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it seems like this is a common thing in people in mixed mental arts, or at least a lot of people I've talked to that they were religious and then they went completely the opposite direction into becoming a new atheist or militant atheist or something, and then sort of went closer to the middle or something like that. And like my experience was basically the same sort of thing too. Like I was raised as a Christian by two parents who were ministers. And then I gradually became an agnostic, and then I gradually got into like Sam Harris and the Four Horsemen and people like that, and became a militant atheist for a while. And then for me, with the Righteous Mind, I guess I would say the Righteous Mind and mixed mental arts in general helped me kind of get less extreme about my own atheism, because the first time I read The Righteous Mind, actually, I was still so much in the new atheist mindset that I didn't buy the narrative of group selection as much. But then when I listened to more mixed mental arts podcasts, particularly ones where Hunter and Brian were talking specifically about group selection and its relation to politics and religion and tribes selecting for certain cultural traits and how religion can have these psychological benefits. This sort of thing was, I guess, I wouldn't say it was only that one thing. It was a lot of different things, but that was sort of the linchpin that kind of made me go on this trail of questioning more, to the point where I, I still consider myself an atheist, but I don't have any problem whatsoever with people being religious. And I find my personal value myself in some religious things. Like I think you saw me comment on the Mixed Mental Arts Facebook group too, that like I'm sort of a secular Buddhist or a Taoist in some ways too. Like I don't believe in any magic or anything like that, but I meditate and I like some of the philosophy in both of those.
yeah. No, I've always kind of saw mixed mental arts as, yeah, for me, I like religion. I haven't thrown it out completely. I'm not a religious person that I believe in the kind of woo woo that religion offers, but I like the history of it. And I think that mixed martial arts and a lot of the authors that Hunter and Brian have read or suggested really back up my, I don't know, confirmation bias about liking both religion and atheism.
Yeah.
Because even if you, yeah, Jonathan Haidt doesn't throw out a lot of religion is mentioned in Happiness Hypothesis and obviously Righteous Mind. But there's other authors that touch on this as well. David Sloan Wilson is another one with
Yeah.
his book, Does Altruism Exist? And I just started reading his new one about
This view of life.
this view of life, which is about kind of taking the Darwinian evolution along with the religious group selection and combining them both to, not make an ultimate religion, but using ideas to kind of move a lot of people narrative forward. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
I haven't read that one. Sounds like mixed martial arts.
Yeah, it's and a lot of that is mixed martial arts. I find it mixed martial arts and a lot of the books that come out of that isn't as dismissive as of religion as other podcasts. Or obviously, if you go down the Sam Harris route and you go on his Facebook fan page, it's totally different about any kind of religion, even Jainism or Taoism or other kind of religions as well. It's all thrown out the window. Whereas mixed martial arts, I've always found to grab little pockets of what good religion has to offer and kind of focus it on that, as well as bring in, the scientific method and all the books that come with that as well. So yeah, it's always been a good mix, I feel.
Yeah, that's an important notion too. Like not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. You can see, particularly in The Righteous Mind, as you were saying, that there are really good psychological benefits that can rise from religion. And if group selection is correct, which it seems like there's a lot of good evidence behind it, then it seems like these psychological traits would be evolutionarily selected for in large groups of people, and this is why they have persisted for so long. But then also, like you said, I like to also myself just particular if I'm talking to some of my more religious friends, just try to not let them get so carried away where only a few of them do this. Most of them don't, but occasionally they'll have this mindset of, well, Christianity is so good that everyone should just be Christian, and that's like the best way to be. And then I push back sometimes on that and say, like, well, yeah, like there are a lot of benefits from religion, but not everyone needs to like be a practicing religious person, and it doesn't work for everyone, and particularly one religion. Like there are tons of different religions, and some of them are going to be better for some people than others, and a large part of it is due to our upbringing and like what part of the world we were raised in and all this sort of stuff. So just like this idea that there are a lot of different good ways for people to live their lives, and there doesn't have to be like one way, whether it's a religious way or a non-religious way.
Yeah, the community thing in religion is probably the thing I miss the most. That sense of like tribe or belonging amongst other people. So, and I think that's why religion is so not addicting, but it's so
compelling.
Yeah, compelling and so easy to get into because there's that sense of group and tribe there. So, and it's easy to defend or be negative towards it, I guess, since it is a tribe or yeah.
That's like well, that's sort of related to another topic that Jonathan Haidt talks about, which is politics, because you can look at politics the same way as religion in that way. And that's one of the things that I like a lot about The Righteous Mind, because he talks about basically this narrative that we're discussing in terms of religion, but then also basically applies it to politics. And you can, with this sort of lens, you can see, and it's so hard to remember sometimes, but like he explains this in the book too, that we psychologically identify with our religions and with our political views, and then it seems like morally wrong if someone disagrees with us religiously or politically. But most of the time it's just that people have different psychological values and different worldviews through which we look at the same issues. And then there's this idea that Jonathan Haidt talks about, which is naive realism, that I like, which is thinking that everyone sees the world the same way you do. But obviously, everyone sees the world in at least slightly different ways. So that's why, because everyone has a different worldview and everyone was raised in different parts of the world by different parents rather, in different environments. Um, like conservatives tend to have different psychological values than liberals and libertarians, and there's some crossover sometimes, and those are generalities, but they're like, it's not that those people are morally wrong and factually wrong and I'm factually right and morally right. It's that it's complicated and people see things differently.
Yeah. Naive realism was good. And I think more what you're touching on right now is moral foundations theory, where, you have liberals and conservatives who, let's say, take caring, for example. They both underlying have the moral foundation of caring, but they just view it differently, whether it be on abortion rights or gun control.
Yeah.
You know, conservatives would say owning a gun is you care because you want to protect your family, you want to protect others close to you from harm. So by having that weapon on you, that's your version of caring. Whereas liberals or other left-wing people might say that not having a gun at all is the way you could go about caring about people in your tribe and taking that violence right out of their hands. So they both care about people not dying, obviously, from gun violence. They just think about it in two different ways. So
yeah, for sure. And like in terms of gun violence too, I was just reminded of another book that we've gone over in Mixed Mental Arts, which is Black Rednecks and White Liberals by Thomas Sowell. Actually, I'm not 100% sure if this comes from that, but this sort of idea of how cities and rural areas can be very different. There's in terms of guns, it's that's interesting too, because in more rural areas, people tend to be more pro-gun, and then people tend to be more anti-gun in cities. But it also tends to be the case that in cities, because there's such a high concentration of population, there are more cops around, and it's easier for the cops to get to your place quickly if you have an emergency. But if you're out in the country somewhere and it might take half an hour for the cops to get to your place, it makes more sense to have a gun, because you might have to defend yourself and the cops might not get there before that needs to happen, right?
Yeah, no, I remember reading that in Seoul that having a gun in a rural area is, you're not going to wait around for the cops to come to your house, especially if they're like 30 minutes away. So, you want to protect your family. You want to, and that goes all back to the herder culture and the honor culture with Thomas Sowell.
Yeah.
As well. Again, going back to culture and how culture kind of evolves, the herder culture, especially through generations of people that took care of sheep and protecting their sheep, and also protecting their family, whether it be with bows or now guns, or But I was gonna say something else about Haidt, but I totally forget about it. There's something to do with
something else about moral foundations.
Yeah, possibly.
Because you were talking about different moral foundations in terms of guns, right? And how liberals and conservatives see that issue from the perspective of care, but from different ways of looking at care.
Yeah, there's other ones too. I think I was gonna say, like, there's Disgust, and there's five of them if I'm not mistaken. Isn't there five?
Yeah, I think so.
Uh, but yeah, good good book. I've been going back and I've been trying to reread books that I've gotten from mixed mental arts. Like I just finished Secret of My Success by Joseph Henrik, which is one that Hunter recommended a while back. But that now I've read it twice now. So, but yeah, I always find that there's so much to get out of these books. It's hard to remember all the points to get
Oh
from it
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Like was it Haidt that had the weird societies with the
I think
West
so, yeah. I think
Western educated industrials, rich and democratic being the acronym?
yeah, yeah, that's a great acronym. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was Height in The Righteous Mind.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
because
that's yeah.
the weird what for those who haven't read The Righteous Mind, the weird being the acronym for our culture that we live in. A majority of us in the West right now, you know, if you have a TV in front of you or a cell phone, you're from the weird culture. And where I'm from, especially, I was thinking about that. The city that I live in is the most weird city on the planet Earth. I'm in London, Ontario, which is home to Western Ontario, probably one of the biggest universities in Canada, but very it's a very weird culture here. Very rich, democratic, all that kind of stuff. So that was another thing that I liked
What
from
are
Height. Height.
what are some of those specific cultural traits that you notice a lot?
Um, Not being aware of other cultures being one of them, and just like weird in a sense that it's, you know, mommy and daddy paid for my university. I've got to take this course. After I graduate here, I'm going to become a doctor. I'm going to be $100,000 in debt after this, but it's okay because I'm going to get an entry level internship, or I'm, you know what I mean? I feel like a lot of that's people that cycle through London, and it's a university town. I've been to a few towns in my day, traveled, and I would say that my hometown is probably one of the snobbiest. I don't know. There's just like a yeah. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but when you live in a university town, and anybody that lives in a university town can tell you there's a certain aura and a certain smell to a university town. It's a lot of up nosed rich brats mixed in with lots of drunk and silly weekends, and yeah, but
Yeah.
that's the culture here.
Yeah. I've noticed just like a seemingly common aspect of weird culture in general too is this idea that you were talking about, that there are people in other cultures who have different characteristics in their lives and stuff like that. One of them that I notice a lot is that it's like a terrible and it's an undeserved terrible punishment if you don't have a car, which really, if you look at it, is not a big deal. Like, there are buses and stuff like that, especially if you live in a city. And like, there are lots of people in the world who don't have cars. And I guess most people seem to have cell phones today, but there are lots of people who live in third world countries or something like that who don't have so many of the different things that we take for granted, like clean running water and also and cars and many other things.
Yeah, no, I mean the homeless here. I was driving down the street the other day, and there's cops and a homeless guy getting in a fight, and the homeless guy had a cell phone that he was pointing and taking video of the cops. And I was saying to myself,
Wow.
that's so like 2019 these days. That of course the homeless guy has a phone that he can videotape police officers. You know, like going 10 years ago, people wouldn't have a phone. You wouldn't be able to afford a phone. You know, you'd have to have um, credit in order to get a data plan, or even like the bill of $100 a month. Who could afford that if you're homeless? But nowadays, now I see you see homeless people videotaping cops. But yeah, I don't know where I don't know where I was going with that, but I thought it was funny when I saw that. But it can tie in with the weird culture here for sure. And going back to automobiles, it's funny that you mentioned cars because there's a lot of kids around here that take the bus, obviously. And then there's the kids that come from rich families that their parents bought them cars for. And it's a lot of Asian kids around here. And they have like Lexuses and like BMWs and like their cars cost more than my house and my cars combined, you know. And it's funny that their parents give them such money and then they send them to a Canadian university, and not to go in debt, but you know, whatever business or whatever path their parents have chosen in life has obviously made them a lot of money. And yeah, I have little faith in university degrees these days, just because I think the market is overflooded with them, and it pains me to see so many students wasting so much money in debt going to schools. And yeah, if you get a degree and you're top of your class and you're making, and that's what you want to do in life, that's amazing. But I think for a lot of these kids, they're just going through the motions just to get a job or something, and you know, going through the motions because their parents told them, hey, you know, Susie, you should go to university and spend $50,000 in debt because this is what you have to do in order to become part of the weird society, when actually you don't have to do that at all.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. Like, I notice particularly where I live too, in Fort McMurray, because it's like there are a lot of people who have really high paying oil jobs here, that a lot of people, like a lot of kids I grew up with, and whatnot, that you know, their parents will buy them a car. Like, it's actually extremely common, to the point where it was kind of rare that my parents didn't buy me a car when I was growing up. And you know, they'll pay for your education and stuff like that. And that's related to what I was saying earlier about how people think it's like this huge, unnatural, cruel, and unusual punishment if you don't have a car, because like it's kids with parents who are rich who just like dote on them, and that's a good thing in a way, but then it doesn't necessarily prepare you for the world in a way. And that's actually related to Jonathan Haidt's newest book with Greg Lukianoff too. But before we get to that, I also wanted to comment on what you were saying about universities. Yeah, I agree with what you said about that too. I think that there's still this huge expectation in weird culture to go to college or university, and as if like this is the important thing to do that'll improve your life and make it better. But like you were saying, a lot of people seem to just be going through the motions and not really 100% agreeing with what they're doing, but getting a degree because this will be a good job or something like that. And like, I personally, when I went back to college just for a semester a few years ago, it was after I'd gotten interested in learning, because I was never interested in learning when I was a kid. I got interested in that when I was an adult. And because I was interested in learning this time, I had a lot of fun, and it was a really valuable experience. But still, like, I wouldn't want to do, like, I would love to do that just for the experience of learning, but in terms of the outcome, it doesn't seem there's much value to that, especially if you're getting like something like a history degree, which I was thinking about doing. So if you're going to university or college because you want to get something out of it, like a good job or something like that, it seems like more valuable to do like sort of what I was doing a little bit after I decided to not get a history degree, like a journalism degree, mainly because that can help me get freelance online writing jobs more easily, or particularly just for people in general, like just short degrees, or like apprenticeship programs or certifications in the trades seem like a really good idea too. And then there's this cultural, it's like sort of a cultural taboo, particularly in weird culture, but much less so here in Fort McMurray because people have a lot of jobs in the trades to um, like to actually go into the trades. If you live in a city or something, that seems like not something respectable, but that's just really that really is a weird cultural thing.
Yeah, it is. It's funny. It's funny that you say just that because, like, I'm almost 40. I work in the trades right now. I did college minimal for about 2 years, got out of it, and then I worked in the trades, and I've been working ever since. But I would love to go back to university. There's history courses. Even they even offer a course on death, like
Oh, cool.
the history of death, how to die, and all that. And I've always thought, man, that would be a cool course to just sit in on and do for a semester or two, even if I don't get a degree out of it, just to sit in on it and hear a different professor talk about it. And going along with what you were saying, though, it's funny that I wasn't much of a learner when I was younger either. I've became more of a learner now that I'm older, I'm a father, and I'm getting ripe in my old age. But I think that university would suit people like us now that are curious, that are talking about Jonathan Haidt and different books. And the problem is like, obviously I couldn't go to school every day, because if I went to school every day, then who's going to pay my bills, right? And I think that we get stuck in where you have to go to school in order to get the job, in order to pay the bills. There's a certain section that you go to, whereas university should just be about people that are curious and want to learn. I'm hoping, like, honestly, I hope that the what do they call that basic income kicks in. Somebody just give me $1,000 a month, dude, and I'll just go to university. And not every day but I would seriously take courses in history, and because I do it already. I sit in my truck all day and I listen to audiobooks, and I do listen to podcasts all the time. And in a way, that's kind of like learning in 2019.
Yeah, me too. Like I've been like this. I was just realizing yesterday that without even really intending to, I sort of I spent a lot of time reading and studying about British literature and old Celtic and Irish literature, and sort of history around the Middle Ages and stuff like that. And then also I started researching climate change and renewable energy too. And what else was it? Oh yeah, I started reading a book about sociology and immigration and income distribution about different classes and stuff. So like sometimes, especially when I happen to be experiencing all that nonfiction at once, it's like basically I'm doing what I would be doing in a university, but I'm doing it pretty much mostly for free. But
yeah, you're teaching yourself pretty much.
Yeah. And yeah, I've thought about the same thing as you too, actually pretty recently. Like I wonder how much it would cost to just go and audit some courses or something like that. Because I remember when I went back to the local college here just for a semester a few years ago, I remember it being really fun and interesting and rewarding, particularly my history class and my philosophy class, because I could learn so much and ask questions to the teacher and talk with the students and the teacher. And then in my philosophy class is my favorite one too, because we had 2 classes a week, and every first class we would take notes, and he would tell us about a particular concept. And then every second class of the week we would arrange the desks in a circle and have a discussion of what we were talking about. And that was like always fun, because we would talk about what the concept is, and people would try to understand it, especially because it was an introductory course. A lot of people were really confused about what was even going on, and we would talk about our different opinions about about particular concepts. Like I was taking philosophy of mind, so it was all about the mind body connection and consciousness and fascinating stuff like that if you're into philosophy. So that was like really fun because especially since it was long before I started doing this podcast and joining the mixed mental arts chats, it was like the only way that I could have discussions with people about interesting intellectual topics, because I don't have any friends here who live here that are actually into those sorts of things. Everyone I know who is into that lives somewhere else.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I got a few like buddies that are in a few topics, but they don't they dive into it and then they jump out quick, and then it's on to sports or some kind of other kind of boring topic that everybody else talks about. Did you ever have to do exams though in your introductory courses, or write any
Oh
like
yeah,
papers?
yeah. We still had to do
So they
final
still graded
exams.
you and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, we still had to do exams and papers. I would it was included in the start of what I was doing for my pre-journalism degree. So it was still part of that, like that was still part of the curriculum, I guess you could say.
Gotcha. See, for me, I don't do well. I don't do good on tests, but I just like I'm not one of those people that I don't know. I could study for a while, and then it just like when it came to test time, I froze. So the education would be awesome. It would be awesome to go to these classes as long as there wasn't any kind of like structure to it. You could just go and come and go as you please.
Yeah,
But
that's
I know that would never be the case.
yeah, like even just having gone back there for a semester rather, a few years ago, I was noticing when I was there, holy shit, like the fucking workload here is insane, and it's a small local community college, so there isn't that much of an incentive, but just with all the papers I had to write and all the reading and stuff, I read pretty quickly anyway, but I could barely read like any other books on the side, like just a novel here and there. Just it was because it was so difficult to keep up with all the work, and I even had to like pull an all-nighter to finish one of my papers, and it was like that's one of the things that I was thinking about a lot, like the pace. That's one of the things that's made me hesitant about going back to pursue some sort of a degree, because I love learning, but I don't want to be like having to be constantly assaulted all day long with more learning and more writing and stuff like that than I can even keep up with.
Yeah, no, the structure kills it for sure. Especially like for me, I get in a rhythm where I'll read a book or I'll do an audio book or something like that. And it'll be like 2 or 3 days straight where I'm on that book. And then it will be like 2 or 3 days where I give my brain a rest. I don't do any podcasts. I'll play video games, or I've been watching a lot of old movies lately. So I'll do
Oh
like
yeah, I saw that.
yeah, I'm doing this silly thing where um, somebody on Reddit put together a list of like the 1,000 best movies of all time, taking the Crichton list nominated for Oscars, Roger Dean Ebert, IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, like, and amalgamating them all into one like lists.
Oh, cool.
So I've been going through, because I went through the list, I looked at it, I was like, fuck, I haven't seen half of these movies. A lot of them are older, and some of them I have seen, like Godfather. But yeah, I've been going through and watching all these old movies. It's funny because underlying in all these old movies are lots of mixed metal arts ideas,
Oh, really?
like or like just human. There's human stories underlying and archetypes underlying all of them. Like Godfather is about the family and different tribes, obviously within. You have the good guys and the bad guys. But even Lawrence of Arabia was like that, and Seven Samurai. There's also like Mob Mentality in the latest one I was watching, which was a German black and white film made in the 30s. But it all talked about mob mentality. This one guy was in the community. Everybody thought he killed children, and so they all ganged up on him. And it's kind of like how social media is these days. But all these old movies, what I'm getting at is they all have like this kind of like, I don't know, the archetype underneath them is it's good versus evil, but there's also good life lessons to be learned here. A lot that comes out of religion. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, like like The Godfather in particular too. Like you were saying, like how it's all about family and tribes and stuff like that, and power, and
Hmm.
like how Michael Corleone, he slips into the identity of his father when his family is in a time of need, even though he was really adamant about never becoming involved in the family business. And then, like in the second one, he gets so extreme that he kills his own brother. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of that good versus evil, tribal. Um, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of underlying human elements and themes to a lot of these movies. Trust is another one that comes out of uh, The Godfather.
oh
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, it's yeah, the movies have been they've been fun to do. Especially the old movies are great, man. A lot of people like I don't know. Movies these days are so shit, and you know they're so shit because you watch a whole bunch of old movies and then you watch a new movie and you're like, holy, it's not even the same, you know. The writing and the plot and even the acting is so it's so different. Like I just watched
yeah,
12 Angry Men, and the whole film is shot in one courtroom, one scene, like pretty much in almost one take, with 12 guys talking around doing different dialogue. But you would never see a movie come out these days. It would never be, and if it is in theaters, it's going to be like a beeline Sundance film that never made it into theaters and probably goes right to streaming. It's not going to be like a top box office hit or whatever. But
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it depends on the movie for me. I mean, I know what you're saying for sure. Like a lot of the huge blockbuster films, I still usually watch them, but to me they almost always seem like pretty mediocre. Like they're good, worth watching, but I wouldn't really want to watch them a second time. And then depending on the movie, like they can be so much better, like you said, if they have better writing and a better plot and better acting. Like this isn't anywhere near as old as like The Godfather or any other old films in general, but my favorite movie is Pulp Fiction, which came out in the 90s. But
mhm.
I just love Quentin Tarantino. But I think Quentin Tarantino and Christopher Nolan are probably my favorite directors.
Yeah, I did Pulp Fiction, and yeah, it's the good thing about these movies too is Godfather, Pulp Fiction, those kind of movies. You can go back and you can watch them. They're like old record, Beatles or Stones records. You know, you can go back and you can
Yeah,
listen to them, and every time you listen to them, like I watched Pulp Fiction, and I've probably seen that movie 10, 20 times.
yeah, me
It's
too.
one of my favorites too, and I went back and watched it, but then I was like, oh, I didn't notice that this happened before. You always pick up something kind of new or different with the really good movies. Whereas
Yeah,
if you watch like I don't know, if you go out and see like the new Avengers movie, yeah, maybe you watch it once, but you're not going to go back to it second or third or fourth time. You know what I mean? There's something
yeah.
about those movies that are kind of the plot is forced on you. It's a lot like records like Nickelback or shitty music where you know that it's like it's forced art, you know, and that it's funny how we're as humans, if you're a movie or a music enthusiast, you can pick up on that art that's kind of fake or phony or
Contrived.
not as good, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, even with newer movies that I like, sometimes the dialogue in particular, maybe I'm nitpicky about that, but that's sort of a pet peeve of mine. I notice a lot of dialogue sometimes is just so ridiculous, and particularly since I'm a writer and I write fiction and I'm writing a novel, I would think, man, if I wrote that line and I were editing it later, I would think, why the fuck did I write that line? Get rid of that shit. Jeez.
Yeah, no, the dialogue can be brutal, and yeah, it's I don't know, it's forced. I forget what I was watching, but something recently that was newer, and it was very. You could tell they put the social justice underlying theme in the movie. Fuck, I wish
Oh,
I could remember which movie it was because it was so blatantly obvious. I
I
was like,
noticed that a few times lately, but yeah, I can't remember any. Well, no, wait, actually, one example I'm thinking of is that newest Predator movie that
hmm?
came out. I think it came out last year. I think it's just called Predator. I went to see it in the theater with my friend, and there was this one part that made me laugh in the theater when that happened because there was one part where one of the characters said, how much time do you think is left before the entire world is completely destroyed by global warming? A year and a half? And I thought, okay, so yeah, like global warming is a problem, but it's not going to destroy the whole world in a year and a half. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, we were talking earlier about how kids can be spoiled, particularly the younger generation, and that's a good route to Jonathan Haidt's newest book with Greg Lukianoff, The Coddling of the American Mind, because yeah, like that's a big aspect that they go through in that book, which I really like how they talk about how overprotective parenting is a big factor that's leading to lots of kids' psychological development getting slowed down because they don't have as much free, unstructured play and all sorts of other factors that contribute majorly to them looking to authority figures to solve their problems when they get into universities. And then this is why a lot of this stuff is happening where like Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff say in the book, it's not that social justice is a bad idea, and it's not a whole book devoted to criticizing social justice warriors. It's this idea that social justice is a good thing, but you're going about it the wrong way, and you're getting carried away and saying like all white men are bad, or violence is okay against conservatives because their speech physically harms me or something like that.
Yeah, there's. I was reading Jonathan Haidt's Twitter today, and there's a group of kids right now that are locked themselves in some university in the States. But one of their demands was they wanted free dryer sheets for their for their whole entire tuition for the year. So they argued, they wanted like free equality for all, free dryer sheets, and then so yeah, it's gotten really ridiculous to the point where you have kids locking themselves in the dean's office, demanding dryer sheets for their semesters. So, and what happens if when these people say no, we're not doing that, So,
Wow.
there's some of us all was good today because the coddling of the American mind talks a lot about cell phones and how the cell
Oh yeah.
phones have really impacted the youth. And I saw somewhere that, or no, I was reading today that in Ontario they just banned, or next year they're going to ban all cell phones in classrooms.
Oh wow. Like
Mm-hmm.
in elementary school and high school, or
That I'm not too sure. I hope both. I think both would be. I mean, until you're 18, I think if once you're 18, obviously you can make your own decision to vote and buy alcohol and cigarettes. I think you should be able to have a cell phone too. But
yeah.
the cell phone, my cousin's a teacher, and he tells me that's his number one problem these days
Oh
is cell phones in the classroom and
yeah.
their
Yeah,
impact on young minds.
yeah, for sure. Oh, it's interesting. I just thought of a few anecdotes about that one. One is when I remember when I was in high school, it was that was like a decade ago now. So the cell phones, there weren't, well, I'm not sure if there were even smartphones yet. No, I don't think there were, but there were still cell phones. And people could still use them at first when I was in grade 9, but then in grade 10 and throughout the rest of high school, they weren't allowed in school, or like you couldn't have them around or on around a teacher. And it's the reason behind that is funny because um, like a few students ruined it for everyone else because they got caught watching porns on their phones in like class or something, and so they were like, no, better take them away from the rest of them because they're all just gonna watch porn.
Yeah. It's always one bad apple that ruins it for everybody, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I never had.
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I never had cell phones like this. I'm showing my age here, but cell phones were never a problem for us in high school. And honestly, looking back at it, I'm glad I had the whatever 4 or 5 years from grade 9 to grade 12 with no. I'm glad it wasn't even a part of my childhood. Like I'm the last generation that will know what life was like to grow up without a cell phone. I came home when the lights came on. I rode my bike like all over the place and just said, "See you later, Mom. I'll be back at like when the sun goes down." And my mom had no fucking idea where I was. I went out biking for an hour, and that would never happen these days.
Yeah.
Even for 13, 14, 15-year-olds. They're at home playing video games. They're not out exploring worlds. They're not exploring life and ups and downs with friends. And, I don't know. We used to cause so much shit, throw rocks at cars and, you know what I mean? Like we used to get in trouble, but at the same time that molded me into, human that wasn't coddled. I can talk to strangers and not get anxious or I don't know.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like there were still lots of like I was addicted to video games, particularly when I was a teenager, but my parents would always set limits on it for us. Like we could only play a few hours at a time or something, and then they'd say, "Okay, you guys have got to go outside now," and we would always hate that. But as adults, my brother and I kind of thank my parents for that because we didn't just get so dependent on video games that we didn't like go out for walks in the forest or stuff like that.
Yeah, there's so much to distract kids these days. I think that's you don't just have video games. You have Snapchat. You have YouTube is a big one. Which is like our version of TV. But there's so much distraction these days that it's hard to stay focused. I think for these kids. And going back to the coddling, I think that's what's leading to. Well, we know it's what's leading to a lot of depression and suicide, especially among females. That stat where the female suicide and depression rates amongst I forget what it was, like 11 to 17-year-old girls especially, is the highest it's ever been in years, and it's due to these cell phones. These girls get bullied not just only at school, but when the class bell rings and they're going home, the Snapchats are going back and forth between their friends, and there's shame and there's a lot that comes out of that. And I'm glad I wasn't a part of it, but it's a huge problem right now. So when I saw this Ontario bans cell phones, I was like, yeah, fucking right on. And I know there's going to be a lot of parents that, because I was talking to my cousin who's a teacher, and he says one of the big problems is parents who would argue, my kid needs their cell phone in class. I need to get a hold of my kid, 24 hours a day. You have no right to take away the cell phone. So I think parents are just as much of a problem with the cell phone thing as the kids are.
Yeah, I guess.
They're the ones in the school that are arguing for their kids to have cell phones is the parents.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's like I understand wanting to be able to contact your kid all the time. But I mean, it's at least reasonable to expect the kids to like put their phone in their locker when they're at school or something. I mean, like when I was a kid, until I got to high school, it wasn't a problem if my parents had to get a hold of me, like especially when I was in elementary school before there were even cell phones. Like if there were an emergency, they would call the office and the office would call my teacher or something like that. And I mean, that can still happen too.
Yeah.
And yeah, and there's this it's a funny thing that happened recently that I heard about. It's related to cell phones and this culture in this younger generation that they refer to as iGen in the coddling of the American mind. Um, my my mom's friend is a substitute teacher, and she was telling me that he was telling her about one day when he was teaching a class, and this girl in the high school where I went to, actually, so I guess cell phones are not banned anymore. This girl she was texting her friend throughout the entire class, and the teacher, said, can you stop doing that? I need you to put your phone away, please, during class. And she said, no, I need emotional support from my friends right now because I'm on my period. and
Wow.
and so but she just kept texting throughout the entire class, like, yeah, you totally need emotional support from your friends throughout the entire class, and that's why you're sending every single one of these texts. And so he took her phone away, and she immediately went to the principal's office or something like that, and brought the I don't know what technically they're called, but the social worker or psychological counselor or something, back to the classroom with her. And this social worker, instead of pulling the substitute teacher out into the hallway and having a discussion with him in front of all the students, she with a really condescending tone said, you need to give her her phone back. She needs it for emotional support right now. And she scolded him and forced him to give her her phone back right in front of the whole class. I was like,
Yeah,
holy shit. That's the problem with that generation today, man. They should read The Coddling of the American Mind.
for sure. Yeah, that's a huge problem. I would say that teachers not having authority or principals not having authority, for me, when my teacher used to give me shit or I got sent to the principal's office, that was something that kind of scared me into not doing, or doing what I should be told to be doing. Whereas there's a perfect example. This kid has a problem with the teacher taking away her phone, and she has to run in to complain to somebody, and somebody actually was there to answer her complaint and follow through with this stupidness of it's just and it's I always say this about Haidt books. It's I feel like they should be required reading if you want to be a human and a good citizen and be involved in the West and North America. In Canada or the US, you should have to take math, English as a first language, geography, and then Haidt's books. There's a list of other things. They should also teach you how to do your taxes, and there's a whole bunch of other things we should be teaching our youth how to do too. But there's so much that is lost on such good ideas. You know what I mean? And there's some of them are coming forward now, finally. Haidt was finally on Rogan, which was nice to see.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And, because he's probably #1 platform-wise these days. So,
yeah.
I think Brian and Hunter had a lot to do with that. I get the feeling.
Yeah, it seemed that way from what Hunter said on the Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that he was an author that only Brian and Hunter had heard of before, and now he did that, and he did another show before that was kind of big. He did Bill Maher. He went on Bill Maher's show too before he went on Joe.
Oh yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. I lost your video.
Oh yeah, I got cut out for a sec. Yeah, I saw that too when he was on Bill Maher.
So it's good that the books are out, but it's slowly coming along, but people are slowly starting to pick up on Jonathan Haidt ideas, which is nice.
Yeah, Yeah,
Just
definitely.
wish it was taught more in the younger grades.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Like it's really really important stuff, like you were saying. Like and they explain in that book, The Coddling of the American Mind, really well too. How it can be. It's understandable that parents can get overprotective, um, but they show how detrimental it can be to the student's development. Because, like, if they look to authority figures for solving problems, then you can't solve interpersonal conflict when you're an adult. And then when you go to your average job in real life, people are not going to care if you tell them that, um, you say like, for example, if someone says abortion is murder, and you say, I can, your words about abortion physically harm me. I demand, or actually, they would probably go complain to their boss and say, this person's opinion about abortion physically harms me. I demand that he gets fired. Your boss would probably say, I don't fucking care.
Yeah, for sure. My boss
Yeah.
would especially, yeah, the real world. That's what's lost is what happens actually in the real world. You know, yeah, the coddling would be a good book for I think a lot of young parents to absorb for sure. Um, Especially again with cell phones, all these distractions that go on these days. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah,
Yeah, and to go back to what you were saying too about how this internet culture disproportionately affects girls too. Yeah, that's interesting where they go into that in the book, because like you were saying, they, like, I guess you could say that girls bully more psychologically, so it's easier for them to bully each other if they're just on Snapchat and Facebook and Twitter all day long. And then if you're boys, like Jonathan Haidt was saying when he was on Bill Maher's show, like, his kids will play video games and they'll kill each other, but they'll, like, work together sometimes to complete goals. And they'll if they get into they might get into fights and hurt each other, but then they'll be done and then they'll be friends again. And with girls, it tends to be more different. Well, they'll spread lies about each other behind their backs, and they might ruin each other's reputation. And if you ruin someone else's reputation on social media today, it feels totally real, especially if you're a teenager or if you're in that generation. So that they talk about that link that you mentioned to rising suicide rates, and to a disproportionate amount in girls, for sure.
yeah. Girls love shaming for some reason, and I
Yeah,
think with social media, it makes it easier when you can get a hold of your buddies at any time of the day and spread rumors about your other friends so easily, especially with Snapchat. Fuck, like 2-second video clips and you're actually seeing that person's face and their facial features. Um, yeah, it's not good for for young girls for sure. But it's funny how boys and girls are different that way. How the guys will get together and you'll get 6 of them on Call of Duty that'll all form a team and figure out how to take on another team or whatever. Whereas the girls use social media more to shame one another or spread rumors or gossip. They love to gossip the females, and the social media platform just makes it that much easier for them.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's a huge problem. But I mean, I like that the coddling of the American mind sort of ends on a note of hope in a way. Like, if we basically, they talk about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and these principles that they go throughout the book, and how if you go with the better versions, then it'll be better for you psychologically. Like, one of them is, oh yeah, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger
Stronger,
versus what doesn't kill you makes you weaker. That
weaker.
example that they use with how the increasing rates of peanuts and all peanut related products being totally banned in like all schools has seen a rising correlation, a massive rising correlation with peanut allergies, and it's shown in the book that it actually leads to a lot less peanut allergies if kids are exposed to even a small amount of peanut butter, then it can develop this then it can help you develop an immunity against it, and that's why they go into the book, into the concept of Nassim Nicholas Taleb's concept that he coined, called being anti-fragile. So I mean, obviously, in a pretty self-explanatory way, it's the opposite of being fragile. So you're more prepared for dealing with life if you can deal with problems when they arise, rather than just like fleeing from them and trying to uh, get as far away from them as possible.
Yeah, you got to go through those trial and tribulations in order to find where you're grounding, or even as a human being. Like Joe Heinrich in The Secret of Our Success, he brings up this point where the reason we're human beings, young adults, stay home with the mother longer than any other animals, like monkeys and birds. They all fly away and they go out on their own at a young age, whereas we stay with our parents for such a long period of time. And the reason we do that is because we have such big brains. These brains have to be formulated or put, ideas and not just ideas, but you have to kind of find out who you are as a person, find out how language works, how to interact with other human beings, all at a young age. And by not letting your kid go out and experience, getting lost or getting into trouble, or just having time alone where their parents aren't being supervised over them the whole time, by not having that, you're not creating more neural pathways in your head for these experiences, so that when you do go to university for the first time and your professor says, give me your phone, and you're like, fuck no, I'm going to go tell the guidance counselor. That's why all these problems arise, because when it comes to the real world, that's nobody's going to put up with, well, majority of bosses wouldn't put up with that shit. And yeah, it's going to be a problem, but even more so a problem if these younger kids are just getting more and more coddled.
Yeah, exactly. Like that could lead to really disastrous consequences really easily, because another thing that they talk about in the book, and that particularly I remember Jonathan Haidt talking about on that Bill Maher episode, and I think also he mentioned this on he was on Ezra Klein's podcast, I think, when that was interesting because he pushed back a little bit on this narrative that Jonathan Haidt talks about. And so he says that yes, this social justice stuff where it's kind of corrupting the universities is only happening in a minority of universities, but it's happening in all the top universities. So these are going to be the people who are going to go on to be the next generation's leaders in the world, and maybe in government and in industry and stuff like that. And if the new leaders are like this, then it's not going to be good for society when everyone is so sensitive that we're just weak. And like, what is society going to accomplish if that's the case? Like this, it reminds me too of this idea that I think Jonathan Haidt and probably many other people talk about, where as societies continue to flourish more and more. Oh yeah, that Steven Pinker talks about this idea in particular too, that as societies tend to improve, it tends to be the case that people get less and less happy because you have all your needs met. You don't need to struggle to survive. So it's like we're just seeking out problems because we don't have any real problems, and it just is so psychologically damaging, which is related to this, what we talked about, that Jonathan Haidt mentions, this rising suicide and rising depression, and also this is related, but I don't think they mention it explicitly, the rising like overprescription of opioids and stuff like that too.
Yeah, well, I definitely think it leads to a crisis of meaning, where I think that opioid kind of that epidemic lies is, um, yeah, when you live in a structured society and everything is kind of, yeah, your head isn't built in a way where you challenge those ideas that are built to you by a structured society. Yeah, it could definitely lead to depression and anxiousness too. I think that a lot of these kids, they get stuck in these mindsets where they don't want to question or don't want to talk to strangers because they're not used to it. They're not used to what, like, if there's backlash, oh no, I don't have a corner to go cry in, or you know what I mean. I just think that, yeah, there's a lot that comes with not letting your youth just sprout and grow, you know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Hey dude, can we pause for a second? I gotta pee really bad.
You can yeah, you can. This is live, so I can't edit it out, but you can go, and I'll just
Go
talk
for
to
your
my yeah, I'll
go.
just talk to myself while you're gone.
All right, I'll be
Talk
right
about
back.
something. Yeah. Um so yeah, it's interesting that that Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff go into this idea of how this sort of mindset in our culture, and particularly in the younger generation of iGen, impacts our culture, and how, like, it seems, I mean, it's not a guarantee, but it seems like this sort of trend is continuing. And if it does continue, like, what would the consequences be? Are they going to be even worse? Like, I wonder, like, I imagine sometimes what it would be like if societies keep progress this way. Like, if it does become the case in the workplace, like in the average workplace, um, the opposite of the way it is today, where if you go to the average employer and you complain about something that someone says about abortion or gun control and demand that that person gets fired, oh, there you go, then it wouldn't be good. I was just talking about how what it might be like if these sort of trends continue, and if you go to where at the average workplace, if you go to your boss and you complain about what someone said about abortion or gun control, then they actually would, and they might actually fire that person. What would it be like to actually go to the average workplace if everyone's so, like, worried about every single thing that they might say that could get them fired or something like that?
Yeah, it's a reality for me. I mean, I work for one of the biggest companies in Canada,
Oh yeah.
and I mean, we've been told in our meetings, don't say anything online, keep all that kind of stuff kind of private or whatever. So,
Oh wow.
yeah, I mean, you don't want to. You shouldn't be bad. Yeah, you should be bashing your company if they're doing wrongdoings, obviously. But I think that, I don't know. There's a whole tattletale culture that's going on right now, and going back to what you're saying about everybody getting offended by everything. I don't. There's too much of that going on these days, and all it does is create noise at the end of the day. When there's not a, like, I don't know. It's hard to say, because obviously if something atrocious is going down, like you're, you know, being stalked or something like that, or you know, your life or your health is in danger. Yeah, you want to complain about those things, but I think we're in a society that's we have so much handed to us these days with, AI, and it's easy to complain about things easily, and because we don't have anything to complain about, really. You know what I mean? When
Yeah.
your food is, I can go 5 seconds down the street and order a Big Mac, no problem. It's not like I'm going out to kill that cow and putting together that
Yeah.
lettuce and all those ingredients. Where everything is so easy for us that when you take out things that we used to complain about, you have to fill that space
Yeah.
and that void with some kind of other dialogue, or else.
Yeah. So that, like, because we're all walking around with the ability to complain about everything on social media any second we want to, we can go to the drive-through, get a Big Mac, take a bite out of it, realize, oh shit, this has onions on it. I asked for no onions. And then you can immediately go on social media and say, fucking McDonald's put onions on my burger when I asked them not to. What the fuck is wrong with McDonald's?
Yeah, and these days, you know what McDonald's is going to do? They're probably going to send you a coupon for a free like Big Mac, and your complaint after all that is actually, there was some purpose in it because you get something out of it at the end of the day. But Twitter's bad for that especially. Like Twitter is just, and Facebook too, I would say majority of these outlets now are just complain fests, or even worse, it's a lot of peacocking. Look at me, I'm doing this kind of like social justice. I just donated $5,000 to such and such a fund.
Oh, a term that Alex Bello used yesterday when I was doing a podcast with her and Kate Fogarty. We were talking about weddings and how there's this spectacle of wedding dresses and stuff, and the term that she used that I think is a good one that applies here is the Instagram culture. That's like exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's huge. Hey, look at this dress I have, or like somebody I know, their house got egged the other day, and they were all like, yeah, but they turned it around as if there was like some kind of, they were being racially profiled or something like that. Like, you're complaining about your egg. First of all, you own your own house, and you're complaining about it getting egged on social media. There was this whole like story involved, like, oh, and then afterwards there was a follow-up post that she put, thanks guys for all your comments and DMs regarding my egging yesterday. So it's so silly. It's like,
it's so emotionally troubling for me. I really need all this help to get through it.
Yeah, for sure. Meanwhile, you live in probably one of the safest towns. Like, you got egged. You didn't get a drive-by shooting or anything like that.
Yeah.
You have nothing to complain about.
My kids were here and they got emotionally scarred by the eggs dripping down the window. It was so awful.
It scared me out of my yoga routine I was doing.
Yeah.
It's
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
One other point I wanted to say about Haidt is he's really good at pinpointing how we act as humans, and I think he realized that a lot in Happiness Hypothesis, where he said, we were good social scientists for such a long time. As we were sitting around being tribesmen and hunter-gatherers, we probably had a lot of time to talk about stuff and figure out how human beings evolve and act within tribes. And I think Haidt brings, in all three of his books, brings to light how we act in societies and in tribes, but we don't always see how we act.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Now we can see how we act on social media. Like, maybe sometimes you might post something on social media if you're drunk or if you're too baked or something like that, and then you might look at it a few hours later the next day and say, what the hell was I thinking?
Yeah, for sure. But you don't have that. I guess that's a good thing. Now that I'm saying this out loud, you have that imprint of, oh, I made that post. If you don't delete it or whatever,
Yeah.
But if you grew up in an era like I did without social media, you those shaming or those things that you did wrong that your peers would let you know about would actually come in real life. You would see facial expressions, you would see a whole bunch of things that is missing from social media.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a
Um,
good point. Yeah. Like if you're just in a if you're just in your tribe and you're surrounded by a bunch of people and you're sitting around the campfire having a conversation and you say something like I don't know like Grib Grib stole my animal skin. He's an awful person and we should all kill him or something like that. Other people would look at you and be like, that seems a little excessive,
so
dude.
yeah, for sure. You would have real time. Um, what's the word I'm looking for? Real time
Feedback?
feedback. Yeah, thanks. Real time feedback, which is missing from, well, it's not missing. You can get real time feedback in social media, but it's just not the same as actually interacting with another human.
Yeah, yeah, like you said, you don't get those physical social cues like facial expressions and body language and so on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, hmm. I can't think of anything else I want to say in terms of this. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Um, Not really, unless you did you want to touch on politics at all with
Yeah,
or
yeah, sure, we could do that.
I don't know. Have you been paying attention what's been going on with Canadian politics lately? Whew.
Only a little bit. I heard about something happening with Justin Trudeau. I'm a little fuzzy on the details though. Like something about how he asked this he asked this woman to fire some person and she didn't do it, so he fired her or something like that. What is going on with that?
So SNC Lavalin is a big contractor out of Quebec, and there's so many underlying layers to the Trudeau scandal, but essentially what it comes down to is he wanted to keep SNC Lavalin as a Canadian contractor, which they were on the verge of losing their contract due to the fact that they were involved with Libyan government or something like that years ago. But anyway, it was if they were found fraud there, they could have lost their government contract. So he was trying to save their government contracts, and the lady who kind of not put her foot down, well, she did, but softly, I guess you could say, was our um, what is she? She was a higher up in his cabinet or whatever, but essentially got fired or let go because she wasn't on board with the same. He wanted to save jobs, pretty much, is what it came down to. Um, but it's funny you have this scandal, and this can relate back to tribalism and Haidt a bit. Is you have the Liberal Party doing certain things, and it's funny you see all the Liberals defending Trudeau like this isn't a big uh, case, this isn't anything Canadians have to be worried about, and then you have Conservatives and you have the NDP parties that are voting or not voting but saying he should step down or he should be. We don't impeach here, but I guess step down. They're calling for his dismissal pretty much after this whole scandal. But it's funny going back to Haidt. It's if you're conservative, you would look at this because your party does as Trudeau should be out the door, or if you're NDP, he should be out the door because that's what your party said that you should do. And it's funny on Twitter you see everybody, if you're a conservative, go along with Andrew Scheer and whatever all those people are saying. It's tribalism at its finest, and yeah, Haidt's good at pointing out that it's good. I think it's good to have tribal communities and small government or portions of government, but when it becomes tribal and you're fundamentally tied to these ideologies, that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, like people who were defending Trudeau, they probably wouldn't have defended the prime minister if he were conservative, and like vice versa, right?
Yeah,
It's like he's on my team, so he can do no wrong, or he's on the other team, so he only can do wrong, or
that's
something
right.
like that, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like the CBC was a perfect example of that. A bunch of, it's hard to say journalists, but a bunch of correspondents that work for the CBC were defending Trudeau and saying that this isn't as big of a story as it should be, when other parties were saying it should be a bigger story. But you see that the tribalness, and the fundamental ideology within politics is the same as religion in some aspects. You have certain rules and certain kind of morals that they abide by, and if you don't fall in place, then well, maybe you're not a liberal, or you're not part of the conservative anymore.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, you see that happening all the time. Like, you have violated our doctrine, therefore you do not belong in our tribe anymore. And you
Yeah,
can see that happening all the time. Like when when a liberal says anything favorable about a conservative, or a conservative says anything favorable about a liberal, or I mean, it seems like kind of more in one direction than the other to me, but obviously it happens for sure. And it's like there are these values that you can't violate, and they get more extreme the more extreme your political or religious views get. And like you said, the political views are basically religious, especially as you get more extreme.
yeah, and it's becoming. It wasn't. I don't know. Maybe I didn't pay attention to it as much, but in Canadian politics, I found that the tribalism wasn't as fundamental years ago as it is now. Like I would say the states has become very tribal in their political, um, parties. You know, if you're a Republican, or if you're a Democrat, you're either one or the other. You can't be both. Whereas I find that Canadian politics, you had a number of people that were kind of in the center that would vote either way. But over the last, I don't know, or maybe even since social media has kind of flourished, now we have Canadian politics being not as bad, I would say, as American politics, tribal wise, but it's getting pretty up there where you have, liberals or conservatives. Um, yeah, you're either part of the party or you're not. A good example of that is Maxim. Do you know Maxime Bernier? Have you heard of him? He was a
Sounds familiar, but I can't recall exactly who that is.
he was a conservative, one of the not one of the leaders, but he was up there as far as on the Conservative Party. But then he recently disbanded from the Conservative Party and started his own People's Party of Canada. Um, but it just goes to, if you're not with our tribe or you're not with our rules, then go start your own party, kind of thing.
Right.
And that's always kind of happened in politics, but I think in Canadian politics, like the PC government was amalgamation of conservatives and progressives years ago. So they amalgamated and made one party, whereas it used to be two before. And instead of amalgamating political parties in Canada like we used to do, now we're kind of branching out and creating our own parties, which
Yeah.
is more in line with what I don't know, Americans kind of did, but I don't know. You really only have two parties. You have the Republicans and the Democrats, but the Tea Party and these Democratic Socialists, I guess, are the new one, or the new kind of break offs from these political tribes, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, yeah, yeah. Like I was gonna say too that I think what you said about social media polarizing politics more, that seems accurate to me. Like we were saying about in the terms of like the psychology of social media, it sort of breeds this reactionary mindset, and it wouldn't surprise me if that's one of the major reasons that politics is getting it. It seems like it's more polarizing than it used to be. And yeah, I was gonna say too, when you were talking about the different political parties, that I think I wonder if in Canada sometimes maybe it's partially a cultural thing, because I don't tend to see most Canadians being anywhere near as patriotic as a lot of Americans tend to be. So I wonder if that's a factor. But I also wonder if it's a factor that we have, at least in terms of the national parties, we have the Conservatives and the Liberals and the NDP. So we have three major parties instead of two. But then again, like you said, instead of different political factions combining, it seems kind of lately like you're just going more extreme. Like obviously the NDP, for people who don't know, is there's sort of like progressives, I would say, and then liberal are kind of more, they're liberal, but they're a little more neutral than NDP, or at least they tend to be. And then the conservatives are self-explanatory. But then also, like in my province, for example, there's the Wild Rose Party, which is like the regular conservatives aren't conservative enough, so we're going to get even more conservative. So it's like more extreme political factions, and if you want to go to the center, you can do that. But then I don't know. It seems like, would you say it seems like the smaller political parties, like the Liberals or the New Democrats, or I forget what they call themselves, the 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 people like Justice Democrats, that's what they call themselves. Would you say that those sort of political parties seem to have less less power and less popularity than like the NDP or Wild Rose parties here in Canada?
Yeah, less popular, but at the same time, it's funny. Social media, it's perfect for politics.
Yeah,
It's a great place to bitch about leaders, which we all love to do. It's a great place to bitch about laws and what's happening um, locally. But the good thing about social media is it allows people with a smaller platform, like Maxim Bernier, I'll just take for example. He started out with like 5,000 followers, and I don't know what number he's on now, but I know he was recently on Dave Rubin, and I know that his party is getting close to a point where it's he's going to be one of the parties that's not in the debates, but going to be like, your party has to have a certain amount of votes or a certain amount of people back it in order for it to be at the forefront of all the other parties, right? So the Green Party is a perfect example of a party that kind of dips in and out of this. Sometimes they're on the ballot box, sometimes they're not, depending on how many constituents they have that follow them and that kind of stuff. But
yeah,
where I'm going with that is I think social media is good by bringing those smaller political parties to the forefront so that more people hear about it. Yeah, which is a good thing, I think, as long as your political structure is good.
yeah,
But there's
yeah,
so many ways a political structure could be, or your platform, sorry, can be different. So,
yeah,
and everybody likes different platforms. Some people
yeah,
want more healthcare, some people want more army or more military. Um,
yeah,
so I think these days, especially in Canada, it's more possible for a smaller political tribe to come forward. I would in the States, not so much so. I think they're kind of fucked down there. It's hard to see Republican or Democrat Party ever going away anytime soon. I think you might have a Democratic Socialist Party kind of emerge from kind of like a Bernie Sanders or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but fundamentally they're just Democrats, and it's easier to.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to put people in just two categories as opposed to 3 or 4 different categories like we have here in Canada.
Yeah, I was gonna mention Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez too, because you're mentioning how social media can help politicians gain more popularity that way, and obviously she's gained a lot of popularity through social media too.
Yeah, it's fucked actually. I've been paying attention to her, and I've been paying attention to her ever since she was running for, like, she had that commercial when she was running for New York office months ago, and she had like 200,000 followers on Twitter.
Oh wow!
Now she's over 1.5 million followers.
Yeah,
and that's just social media that's brought her to the forefront. If you listen to conservatives and Ben Shapiro, obviously it's all negative. But if you listen to other people, the progressives, it's all positive. They like the way she dances and all that kind of silly stuff. But underlying of it all, it's all social media that has made this girl popular for us. Yeah. I would argue that a lot of her followers don't know what she's fundamentally for, but they just see a woman possibly in office and I'm going to vote for her. I don't know. There's a lot of variables and factors.
Yeah. And there are a few scandals with her, like there kind of are with Justin Trudeau.
Yeah. Yeah. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. So.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it is interesting. I think you're probably right that a smaller party is, other than Republicans or Democrats, is much less likely to be able to gain power in the States than in Canada, because like we were talking about, they're more smaller parties and they seem to be more popular. Like I remember, at least in local and provincial elections, and I think often even in federal elections, I can, like when I go to vote and look at the choices on the ballot, there's usually are the progressive or the Liberals, the Conservatives, the NDP, and then there's usually like the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, maybe even like one or two others. And there does always seem to be a variety of who you can vote for, at least.
Yeah, more variety, which is less of it's with more variety, I think becomes less like if you're a Republican or a Democrat, it's easy to lump somebody in either one of those two categories, depending on what, where they side on abortion or gun rights or a host of topics. But when you have 4 or 5 different parties, you could say that I've voted NDP, I voted Conservative, I voted for all 3 parties, but it's easier for me to go back and forth between all these parties because there's so many parties to choose from, whereas in the States you only have 2 parties to choose from a majority of the time. So yeah, I don't think either system is well suited for over 20 million people population wise. I don't think 2 parties is 20 or 300 million people, and I don't think here in Canada 3 or 4 parties is good for 40 million of us, because I think a lot of the checks and balances are lost in the people when you have a government that big. Should be more locally, but hey, that's what we're kind of stuck with these days. I really like that. Have you heard of Andrew Yang? Did you see that?
Oh yeah. I saw that Joe Rogan podcast. Yeah, he seems really interesting. Yeah,
he does seem interesting, and he seems interesting because he's one of the bright spots, I would say, that the Democrats have put forward as far as candidates.
Yeah. I really like I've never heard or read anything that explains the idea of universal basic income more than him. And I mean, like he pretty much convinced me that it's at least a really compelling idea. Like you mentioned it earlier too. Like I've thought many times too that if I could get like $1,000 a month, I could keep doing my creative work and not have to worry as much about having other work, and I could go and travel and visit friends more, which I've been wanting to do lately. And it wouldn't be as much of a big deal if I can't find a job or can't get as much tutoring students or anything like that. I mean, it seems like a good idea for sure to me.
Yeah, the universe. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say it's not a good
Yeah,
idea. Fuck, give me $1,000 every month. Okay, sure.
yeah,
I'm not going to argue with you there. Um, but yeah, I would say he's put me more in a mind state where it's accepting. Whereas before, I did lean a little bit more. Okay, this isn't going to be good. We're going to just have more drug users on the street and more people that are just taking their $1,000 every month and blowing it on gold chains. It's
yeah,
it's at first, when you first hear it, I think the idea sounds like silly, but
yeah,
after you think about it for a while, how many gold chains can you really buy? And once you have a
yeah,
whole bunch of gold chains, you get bored of that
yeah.
after a while. So
And also, one thing I've thought about in relation to this too is, yeah, there are going to be some people who, if you give them $1,000 a month and they can actually survive on that amount of money, then they probably just like won't do anything. And I mean, that doesn't seem like a huge problem to me, especially since like motivated people, like there are lots of motivated people who would just they would keep being productive members of society anyway. Like I would, if I got $1,000 a month, I wouldn't just start quit all of the creative pursuits that I'm always doing and just play video games all day every day or something like that. It almost makes me think about how if that sort of thing were to happen, it would almost create like more more of an economic hierarchy or something like that in some way, because then the people who choose to work and stuff, there could be more of a division between them and the people who don't have the same level of motivation, but then they wouldn't really be as much of a burden on society because they could still be able to support themselves and stuff like that.
yeah, I think the people that are going to take advantage of those social services are going to do it regardless if they're getting $1,000 or not. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah, I think
if
so.
you're lazy and you're going to just ride welfare, you're going to do that even if universal basic income isn't a thing yet. So
Yeah, yeah, I think so
it
too.
will give those people like us that are like, I like to learn. I'm not like, I'm motivated to learn just like it's something to do for I find it entertaining. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah,
think
me
there's a
too.
lot of people that like history and just like learning and seek it out as their form of entertainment. So, and ultimately going to just do that more if you give them $1,000 a month.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like if I had more money for learning resources and stuff, I would probably do things like buy more books and restart my Audible account and, pay for some services that offer you like a greater variety of courses and books and stuff like that. Like that thing, the great courses, which you can listen to on Audible, a lot of those, like all sorts of things like that you could much more easily do if you had more money.
Yeah, for sure. Hey,
Yeah.
bro, that's pretty much all I got.
All right. Cool. Yeah. Well, this is a great and fun conversation. I'm glad you joined me. Thanks.
Yeah, no, dude, this
Yeah.
was this is awesome. Actually, I had a lot of fun. We should,
Yeah, me too.
if you're ever looking for somebody to chat about height or politics or mixed mental arts or any topics, man, even if you want to tackle like third trimester abortions,
Yeah.
let me let me know.
Yeah.
We can we can talk about it.
Oh, that'd be cool, man. Yeah, I got into that with Dusty a little bit last time he was on because you were talking about how people have this polarizing opinion on abortions, but it's complicated because the like there could be complications late into pregnancy, and you might have to choose between the life of the child and the mother and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I'm sure we'll talk again for sure, and maybe maybe with a few other people too. Like Dusty's always fun to talk about with like political events and Jonathan Haidt and stuff like that. And I just finally talked to Reed Nicewonder too, who's also, and I talked to him about Jonathan Haidt a lot as well. So
Did
yeah,
he say anything about the podcast coming back? Because doesn't he
um,
edit the podcast? Reed?
yeah, he was saying that it seems like they're still on a bit of a hiatus, but it might be ending pretty soon because I think Brian Callen's done shooting his show. I think it's called Schooled for now. So I think they might be planning to do it soon. But he didn't say that they for sure are. He said that as far as they know, as far as he knows, they're still on a bit of a hiatus. So hopefully that will happen again pretty soon.
Yeah, man. I
Yeah,
kind of missed the podcast, but
yeah, me too.
yeah. And Hunter too. I don't know what happened. Well, I know what kind of happened to Hunter, but you know not as he's not as around as he was before. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well,
life happens.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I'll say all this stuff I like to say at the end of my videos here, and then you can offer any plugs or final words there.
Sure.
All right. So, all right. Thanks everyone so much for watching another episode of the Mindgasms podcast. We found it as interesting as I did, and thanks to everyone. Thanks so much to everyone who likes and shares this video, and to those of you who subscribe to my channel, and especially to those of you who contribute to me on Patreon. Really appreciate that, and it means a lot to me. And I'll add my Patreon link to the description for this video like I always do. And like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all. All right. Keep having mindgasms, everyone. And any plugs or last words there, Chris?
Yeah, be kind to each other. I think Bill and Ted said that, or be well to each other, or something like that.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
You can find me online. I'm on Twitter and Instagram under Styles, which is my last name and style mixed together. It's STYEILES on both Instagram and Twitter, and that's where I am most these days. So watching movies.
If you want to send me those, I'll add the links to the description of this video.
Cool. Yeah, we'll do, man.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, man. And thanks, everyone. And adios until next time.
Peace. Later.